and he's going to house it.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your DFS and NASCAR betting home. That is Brian Twining. I am Kyle Robert. We are back in our respective homes. We are ready for another amazing week of NASCAR. If you missed it, we had a great conversation with Chris Wormy, who's a professional NASCAR bettor and media personality, and does a podcast with Todd Furman called Stay Green on the Bet the Board podcast. I recommend mixing that into your rotation.
For sure.
Had a great conversation. Make sure you check out our video. It is a little more evergreen than most of our stuff. So really, really fun. But Brian Twining, how the hell are you?
I'm doing great, Kyle. And yeah, going back to that pod with Chris, really taking a lot of what he said to heart and trying to look at these races from a little bit of a different perspective, trying to look at it through the eyes of a professional bettor and going back to the market after you see somebody kind of perform as expected and taking maybe a little bit of a shorter number makes more sense than just jumping in the market early. But yeah, no, I'm excited for this Phoenix race from what we saw during practice. And if you caught the Xfinity race today, like these cars look extremely difficult to drive on this track with the new aero package for the next gen. So I'm pretty stoked for tomorrow.
Yeah. With Chris, it's all, always want to get better at betting. We'll always want to be more consistent,
exactly.
And figure stuff out. And yeah, it's better to see a car come off the truck and perform better than expected than to get on it expecting something and then realizing, oh no, that is not. Bubba going around, and even in his qualifying lap, he's just bouncing around like he's in a little bit of a hover car. And I'm like, oh no, buddy, this ain't it. What do you make of the Toyotas? Because obviously Denny qualified front row. Christopher Bell looked pretty dang good, but then all the other Toyotas look kind of stinky and slow. Do you think? Is it more of just Bell and Denny are that much better? And even I think they were talking about it in Boyer and Danica about like maybe it's a little more dependent on the driver and a little less dependent on the car this week, and maybe just because they were much better drivers, they are able to handle a little bit better.
Yeah, and if you follow a lot of personalities on Twitter and just all the socials that are involved with NASCAR and all that type of stuff, I mean, a lot of the rhetoric coming out of this week with the new package is like, this is going to be a driver's race. And I mean, it's no surprise Denny Hamlin, one of the best handlers in the sport, qualifying on the front row there. I mean, Kyle Larson's car is an absolute rocket ship. And as far as the Toyotas go, like Bubba has never been known as a fantastic driver of the track. Like he's always has great speed, but when it comes to maneuvering, off throttle time and all that type of stuff, he's not known for that. So it's not surprising for me to see him, kind of middling. I do think that there's more to take away from practice than what we saw at qualifying. For instance, Tyler Reddick, somebody I'm extremely high on this week, he qualified, that 13th, 14th spot, but during practice, he had the least amount of incremental fall off of any Toyota, and it wasn't even close. And he was right there with Kyle Larson in terms of the small amount of fall off as he got longer into a run. And we know Reddick, the guy, he likes to ride up against a wall at that Homestead track and all of those other type of tracks. So I think Reddick will surprise some people this week. And I think Toyotas, you'll even see the old man, Martin Truex Jr. I think he'll sneak up there on Sunday. I think he's kind of a sneaky play just because he has past successes here, but I'm not taking too much away from the single lap speed because there is going to be a lot of fall off in terms of speed. I mean, you saw it qualifying today. Kyle Larson ran a 27.327 or something for his first
2/10 of a second faster than anybody else. It was wild.
Yeah, and then he fell off a full 0.3 of a second for his next lap, still qualified on pole. But I mean, that just goes to show you that was one lap to another.
I'm curious too to see if he knew oh, okay, I don't actually have to push it that hard.
That's kind of what I was thinking too, is he maybe let off a little bit or something, but yeah.
It was nice to see Reddick not qualify amazingly, because he is somebody that I'm interested in betting, and I know his number got steamed a little bit. Hopefully now it's starting to gravitate out back to probably where it should be again in the 20s. So Very excited to potentially get a piece of that. Let's review last week before we dive into this week, mainly because we killed it and we had an amazing week and we want to stunt a little bit, but it was a hell of a week out there in Vegas.
It sure was.
Obviously on my end, hitting William Byron to win at 18-1, like that's a wild number to me. Obviously that got chopped basically in half by the time qualifying and practice and all that stuff happened, but it was nice to have. Willie B obviously got the top 5 by winning. Harvick top 10, Bowman top 10, Cindric top 10, Bowman top 5.
I just want to say about the Cindric top 10, like we can sit here and I could say, oh yeah, you're welcome calling this out early in the week, but he got lucky as hell.
Yeah, and we talked about that with Wormy, right? Like, did you win the bet because it was the right bet, or did you win?
Yeah.
And obviously with NASCAR, there's a lot of luck involved. If they don't have a caution and they don't restart, William Byron probably gets second or third in the race, and I don't cash that outright. So,
but he honestly, he was the best car all day.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I mean, like,
in terms of like, I was on the right horse. It just was it a matter of him actually coming. Much like Bubba being my top Toyota last week. Did he win the bet? Absolutely he did. Did I get a great number? Absolutely I did. Was he the best Toyota? Debatable.
I think there's a case to be made that that Bubba was the best Toyota, because when you look at the running order, pretty much the entirety of the race, Bubba was running between 5th and 8th all day. Yeah. There was no time that he had fallen back, or he wasn't necessarily going to compete for the win. But I mean, if you're going to run right there in the second half of the top 10 all day, like that's a tremendous car. And that's somebody who, if you could get that on a week-to-week basis and you're going to get a 9-1 on a top manufacturer bet, like you're going to take that every day.
1000%. I did have Brad K to top 10 at -140. That
he was there.
So but yeah, very, very happy with my week. Obviously, you didn't hit the outright, but you had a Bubba top 10, you had a Cindric top 10, you had a few groups where you crushed it. You had Bowman or Blaney over Chastain. That didn't work because Ross won. That's right. But you did have Bowman top 10, and you had a Cindric. Oh, did that not make the card? I don't know. I remember you betting Cindric top Ford, and that came to fruition, but maybe that was just a Vegas bet.
Oh yeah, maybe I may have added that late and just never wrote it down, but I mean, just for show purposes, just because I didn't keep track, that's my own damn fault. But yeah, I feel like my favorite bet of the week though was one that I didn't actually have on the card because it was at a sports book in Vegas, but that was Joey Logano to not top 5. I went all in on the Fade Logano week, and it finally effing worked.
Yeah, it did. We had a great week out there. It was nice to be able to have access to a lot of those books, even if they do post it late. I parlayed Ryan Blaney and Logano to not top 5, and that cashed as well.
It was a good bet.
It was a nice week for us. I'm sure we'll get slapped around a little bit, but as you can see, up 14 units. Brian's up almost 6 units. We had a rough Daytona, but man, did we climb out of that hole really quickly. Now we got to be smart, Brian, and not spray the board, as they say, and end up regretting our decisions. But
I don't know if that's actually possible for us, though. So I mean,
for sure. But yeah, we'll have some bets for you. We'll have some thoughts in the matchups and all that stuff. But first, let's dive into DraftKings. And talk about this. We'll start at the top. There is one 11,000. I'll combine them with the 10K guys. Kyle Larson starting first, 11-1. Really easy click for me. He might be a little more expensive than people want to spend. I totally get that. He is dominant. He looks like he could win all 3 stages and just dominate all day, and kind of reminiscent of 2 years ago when he was the guy, and he's probably, if not the best, one of the best drivers in all of NASCAR. He's a guy that can jump into almost any car and be an elite driver. So obviously when you're driving, a talent is more important. And what the car looks like, a lot of potential for him. Joey Logano starting 16th, obviously a ton of success here. Didn't have the best qualifying day, but could be really compelling as a mid-pack guy who could move to the front, even though Brian does not like him. Kyle Busch starting 9th. Your guy Ryan Blaney starting 8th at 10.3. And then Ross Chastain at 10K, I think makes a lot of sense as a potential early dominator. Get to the front and then make some noise. I guess of this range, who stands out to you? Where's your money going?
I mean, this may be a week where you just go all in on Kyle Larson. You saw me tweet it out probably prematurely because I mean they were pretty quick to take it down within the hour. But like after practice, if you could still have gotten Kyle Larson at plus 750 at FanDuel, like that was a great bet. I mean, he's well under that now at every sports book.
Yeah, I almost bet him to win the poll just because of how dominant he was, but I was like 3-1. I can't do
right.
that.
That's the same way that I thought. I was looking at the number and I'm like, damn, that's so short. But yeah, like, and then also too, I tweeted out earlier today. It's really interesting to note that 3 of the last 5 winners at Phoenix all started on pole. And
yeah, or they had the most important pit stop.
Yeah, exactly. Like
you want to have that first one because at the end of the day, that could be the difference between you winning and losing. And Kyle Larson not only had the fastest car, all weekend so far, but he also has that crucial pit stall, and will be really important if him and Bell and Chastain or whoever you want to lump in there are all kind of racing off pit road towards the end. That being right there and being able to jump off is critical.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what type of roster percentage he's at, because being 11-1 and starting on pole, there is a lot of room for negative points here with him starting from the front. Say he has a issue like he had at Fontana where he goes 17 laps down with an electrical issue, then you're effed.
Yep. So it's all about diversifying, but yeah, I agree. He is the most compelling option from up here. I think for me, the next would be Chastain as a dominator, and then I like Logano a lot more than Brian. Obviously, I think Brian would just say take Ryan Blaney, if not Kyle Larson, and move on to the next range. As we dive into the 9K, Denny starting second. Obviously, felt like despite qualifying second, he seemed to feel like his car is not where he wants it, and like he can get more out of it. So that's an exciting thing if you're thinking about a guy who could potentially pop in and win the race. Obviously, starting second, you want him to have a legit chance at that. Tyler Reddick, 9,400. Martin Truex, 9,200. Kevin Harvick rounds out the 9K range. Reddick, Truex, Harvick all make sense as kind of a second dominator, guy who could move up, a guy who could potentially win the race. I'm a little more optimistic, obviously, in Harvick. Brian, and probably rightfully so, sees him as more of like a top 5 option, but
which is great for DFS purposes, especially for that 9K range. Like that's all you're really hoping for I mean, if that's the maximum you can get out of him, I think that's great, because maybe you get a couple fastest laps. Maybe you get a couple of laps led based on
maybe there's some pit rotations or something. And then in stage 3 kind of falls back to 4th or 5th. And,
exactly.
I mean, totally reasonable. Are you interested in Truex starting 13th at 9,200? We talked a little bit about the frustration with the Toyotas.
I don't know, man. It's just like, to me, Truex and Harvick are kind of in that same mold of guys who have, they've kind of been there near the front, but they haven't really been at the front. And I mean, it's only $200, but in terms of like past successes here, I mean, Harvick's running on like 18 consecutive top 10s in Phoenix. So, I mean, kind of what you're getting there. I'd prefer to go down to Harvick, and I'd also prefer to take Reddick over Truex for a upside play. Just looking at the practice numbers and how well Reddick's car performed over the long run. I mean, obviously JGR will make some changes to the car going into tomorrow's race, but I don't know. In terms of possibility, I would much rather grab Reddick than Truex.
Yep, I agree. So that means Truex is a great pivot play if you are looking to diversify in GPPs. But I'm 100% with you. Reddick, I think, has the most upside of the group, and I feel best about Harvick kind of just in terms of safety. The 8K range is interesting. Obviously, Chris Bell starting 5th. If you want to fade Larson, I think Bell makes a lot of sense. He's also starting in a front pit stall without a car in front of him, really near the front. So that could be a difference in him potentially winning the race. He looked good all weekend. I don't hate him at 88. Bowman was a little underwhelming, starting 18th, 8,600 would be interesting. I think he'll get more out of his car on Sunday, but definitely don't love it. I like Daniel Suarez a lot. Obviously, qualifying 11th
Yep.
at 8,500 isn't as ideal as you'd like, but I think he is somebody that if you want a second potential dominator, could be a very legit candidate. Chase Briscoe, doing Chase Briscoe stuff. I think last year might have been the admiration, and it's just he's backing up a little bit and not living up to kind of expectations.
Well,
I think
I I wanted to take a step back from that a little bit. Like, it's not just Chase Briscoe.
no, I know.
SHR as a
Yeah.
whole has been dog crap to
But I
begin
think
the season.
he will be somebody that's very popular because of past history, and I think people have already been betting him. I think they'll be on him in DraftKings. I think he's an easy fade for me. Bubba Wallace starting 19th, 8,200. We talked about his struggles. I could see him being somebody that gets better on Sunday. Maybe,
I think he threatens a top 10. Like,
Yeah.
he's clearly getting better as a driver at tracks that he wasn't traditionally running well at, but
Yeah.
he's just somebody I can't trust. He has never done well here. So
Yeah, I'd much rather use Bubba than Briscoe, just put it that way. Speaking of improving, Josh Berry, he looked much more comfortable today. Obviously, having a full week of prep and kind of figuring stuff out definitely
yeah,
helps. But obviously, that car is great, and
I
it
was just
has a
gonna
lot
say
of
he's in great equipment.
so a lot of potential there. Starting 17th is another interesting name. The 8K range, or the 7K range rather. Brad Keselowski starting 4th. Eric Jones starting 10th looked awesome in qualifying.
Until he
Are,
didn't.
are you buying him? Oh yeah, obviously.
No way.
He's just a sinking rock that's going to end up in the back.
Yeah.
Austin Dillon starting 30th at
Ugh.
7,500's really compelling. Ryan Preece starting 25th. No, thank you. Austin Cindric rounds out that 7K range. What are your thoughts there? Anyone that you're clamoring to get in our lineups?
Well, first of all, I got to go back to Josh Berry 1 second. So my wife's in Vegas right now on her little like women's weekend retreat, and I had her place some bets for me at the Westgate. And of course, she thought it would be funny to place a $2 bet on Josh Berry at 100 to 1 to win the race on Sunday because she saw the odds and she goes, "Hey, let's bet this guy." So it is nice to see him qualify 17th. I mean, who knows? Anything can happen. But in this range here, I mean, Keselowski was a guy that, as you'll see as we transition over to the betting card, like the numbers were far too long on him early in the week. I was kind of like in Kyle's mold last week. He performed well. He's always done good at this track. He's been running really fast. He was in line for a top 10 last week. I mean, starting 4th at 7,800. Do you think that he's able to veteran his way to a top 10 finish here? And I mean, even if he loses spots at 7,800, just the finishing position alone may warrant using that type of salary on him. So I think he's the most intriguing and somebody to kind of like go against the mold if you're in a GPP lineup.
Yeah, and he could get to the front in stage 1 and maybe leads a couple laps, maybe has a couple fast laps. I don't think that's crazy. We'll dive into the 6K range. Ty Gibbs starting 14th. He seemed to have moments out there where he looked decent. Chris Buescher, 6,600, starting 21st. Justin Haley, starting 26th. The Dinger, 6,200. Always a guy that I gravitate towards. Just price tag, where he's starting, potential move forward. Makes a lot of sense. And then Noah Gragson, starting 32nd at 6K. If you're putting someone from the 6K range into lineups, where are you going?
I'm going to the top of the board here. Eric Almirola, his qualifying run was absolutely atrocious.
I totally skipped over him.
But he's a guy who's done pretty good at these tracks. Like, I mean, he's got a pretty decent average finish. It's somewhere like in the mid-teens or like, 13th, 14th. So, I mean, starting 31st, $6,900, he'll probably be rostered a ton. And there is the worry that maybe SHR just ain't it this season. But yeah no, Almirola is somebody I'm really high on. I don't care about the single lap speed. I think he's somebody that could run his way into a decent finish, even possibly a top 10. I mean, he won, I think it was the Nashville or New Hampshire race a couple of years ago for his only victory. So, I mean, he's familiar with these types of tracks.
Yeah, I think 10 to 12 to 15 is probably about where he'll finish and starting 31st, basically cutting that in half at least. That's a nice day and for a very affordable price. I totally overlooked him. 5, we'll kind of round out the rest. We have Ricky Spinouts, 23rd. Harrison Burton starting 27th. Corey LaJoie starting 28th. Michael McDowell pops up, starts 7th. Good for Michael, 5,400. Zane Smith, Ty Dillon. The Gilly gang is in the
Rick
15,
Ware car.
and then Zane Smith and Gilliland's old car. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if we get some driver matchup between it's Zane Smith versus Gilliland. Like that would be really cool to play into that if you were a sports book.
Yeah. All right, let's build the lineup. Kyle Larson or nah?
Yeah, do it. Just do it. I mean, you eat the chalk here.
Okay, so Kyle Larson's in. Speaking of eating the chalk, are we going to combine him with Eric Almirola?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So we have AK for the last 4 spots. Who's calling out your name? Anyone screaming value, or you really want to make sure we include this week?
Man, this lineup's going to be difficult to build here. I mean, we seem to be kind of simpatico on Tyler Reddick. I know he's a little bit more expensive than you probably want to go right now, but starting 12th, I think he's somebody who could pop.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Let's see where that leaves us. So 9,400. That's fine. We can crawl our way down here. So if we are looking to save money, the Dinger starting 22nd. Cindric starting 20th. Austin Dillon starting 30th. Anybody exciting to you? I mean, we could even dive down here if you want.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like the 3 guys right there that pop are obviously AJ Allmendinger. I'm all about the Dinger. And then Brad Keselowski's teammate, Chris Buescher, who, I mean, he's definitely stepped up his game. I mean, the finishing results don't always show, but he's been a pretty strong car on a week-to-week basis. He's starting 21st. But, I mean, ultimately, I think the first ad's got to be Dinger at 6,200, and then we can kind of see where we go.
Yeah, that leaves us 8,200 or more, so we can figure out what we want to do. We do have one early leader. We hope Reddick can kind of follow suit. Bubba would be interesting to me, especially if we're avoiding the Briscoe. Suarez, I don't hate, but he's probably a little too far forward. We can even go up a little bit higher and then dive way down for the last drive, but do you want to ride with
this week is really difficult. I don't mind Bubba. I don't know. I'm just scared away from his past results on these tracks. Yeah. He did have like I think it was a top 5 at, I think it was New Hampshire last year, but that's kind of an aberration from his previous results at this track.
That's the outlier, right?
It's
pulling up my sheet. Cindric has a few top 10s on the flatter tracks. Let's see who else pops. Bubba did have some decent runs, obviously not at Phoenix, but on the flat tracks. Harvick is always interesting. I expect Michael McDowell to fall like a rock. Ty Gibbs actually isn't bad. Well, because he just gets us.
I just don't know how many races Ty Gibbs is not going to be involved.
Harrison Burton.
Yeah, I think Burton is somebody that's interesting this week.
An 11th, 2 top 20s. Where's he starting?
I think he's near the bottom.
27th.
Yeah,
I'm good with that. Let's throw him in, then let's just basically do whatever we want. Outside.
How convenient! We can't get to Logano. Perfect.
Weird. What about Harvick? Starting 15th, 9K.
I think that's a great pick. Like the only thing is then it's super chalky. However, I mean, how many people are really going to go for the pole sitter?
I think. Well, yeah. I think I think obviously Almirola will be chalky, but I think getting to Reddick will give us a little bit of difference. I think Dinger will get us a little bit of difference. Like 9,400. I mean, we talked a little bit about it. We would rather go up to Hamlin or down to Reddick. Truex is kind of getting squeezed, but like Byron's interest. Like there's a lot of interesting names here, and then obviously you can drop down and grab some. So I like that. I will save that lineup. I will put that into a contest, and I will let you guys know. Obviously, we could not enter it last week because we were in Vegas, and that completely shattered my DraftKings account for like a month last time. So I was not even going to try. Let's look at the updated betting odds and see where the value sits. Let me scroll over. So let me pull up, because Brian and I have been making bets this week and adding them to the card. I guess we could just look at that really quick. In terms of outrights, I have Christopher Bell at 14. I have Daniel Suarez at 35, and then I have Kevin Harvick at 12-1.
Ooh.
So we'll take a look at kind of how those numbers have moved, and then you have Reddick. You got 30. Is that what do I have? Oh no, I don't have Reddick. No. Larson at 9, which looks incredible at this point, and then Truex at 13. So
yeah, and the Truex number was more so about the value, just because his past history, and then obviously now, like, I don't think he's somebody I'd be going back to the board with.
Yeah. So Larson, let's talk Larson. 3.5, 4, 4.5. I mean, apparently PointsBet is a 550, so if you can get to that.
If you could get 550, I'd still be betting.
But at 4-1, is that a number you want to bet, or do you want to wait? Maybe he falls back in after a pit stop or has a little bit of issue in stage 1. Then you bet him at maybe 5 or 6.
That's the thing. Is like I don't think you can play for that. Like I think
if you like Kyle Larson, fire on the number and hope he wins.
His car is so good. I think there's a legit shot that like he runs away with stage 1 and the number gets shorter.
Yeah,
as
and
the
we're
race
playing
goes
him on
on.
DraftKings, so obviously we think he could dominate from the jump.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you can get 4-1, grab it. Chris Bell 8-10. Denny between 7.5 and 10. Your guy Ryan Blaney, you still get 10-1 on him. That's kind of interesting. William Byron, I guess of like the kind of 8 to 10-1 kind of range, like even down to Logano, he dips more into like the 12. But which number is most appealing in this range for you? Is it Ryan Blaney?
Well, I'm gonna add Blaney just because, like I said, he will be on the card and he will be bet every single week until he finally friggin' wins a damn race.
He'll be on my card too, but only because I'm fading him in matchups.
And I mean, when you look at last year, like he was the strongest car at Phoenix, and it probably wasn't even close. And so I think that there's something to be said about them going back to the garage, looking into what they did wrong. And when you watched his qualifying run, he was the only guy that shifted into, I think it was 5th on the back.
Yeah, what is he doing?
Honestly, I almost feel like he's like testing the car to see how that will run on Sunday, and then maybe tomorrow he comes out completely different strategy and he blows people away. So I think the 10-1 number is not horrible.
It's a weird move. I kind of like going back to Byron at 10-1. I don't know how I don't know that I love it, but he is probably the most interesting in this range. Just because we talked about it even with Wormy, like when he unloads well and the car looks good, then he is a contender. And when the car struggles, he tends to struggle and just has an awful day. So I am going to add it to the card because
and he looked fine for qualifying. So
I think he can win, even if he didn't get the pole. 10-1. Whereas he's 10-1 at PointsBet. Are we good with that? Yeah.
Yeah, and then I mean, interesting to note too, he was the second best car in 20 lap average during practice and second best car in 25 lap average. Now we only saw like, a fifth of the field run 25 laps during practice, but I mean, HMS is coming out here and they're literally flexing their might on the rest of the field. They're looking extremely strong.
Yeah, a week after going 1-2-3 in the Vegas race.
Yeah, right.
Kyle Busch, I think, is interesting. If you want to go back to him after he struggled a little bit in Vegas, didn't look great in qualifying and practice, but he's fine.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like, I want to still see if maybe there's like the 3.5 win total still hanging out there. Like, if you could get plus money on that, I think there's a legit chance
to go
that he doesn't get to 4 wins this year. As strong as he looked at Fontana,
it's crazy how fast our minds shift. Because after Fontana, we're like, this guy's not losing the rest of the way. And then he has like a bad run in Vegas and kind of underwhelms in qualifying in Phoenix. And we're like, could we bet under 2.5? What about that?
Well, I mean, it's two straight weeks now at like,
at places he usually performs.
Yeah. So there's something with RCR.
I love this range, by the way. I think Reddick at 22 is really compelling. And I think Ross Chastain at 16 is really compelling.
Yeah, I don't know if I could get to Chastain here. I just think that the horses up front are just a little bit stronger. Like, I mean, I'd probably prefer to go as disgusting as this Logano, just knowing his past successes here at 12-1 than Chastain at 16. And knowing, I mean, in a vacuum, Logano's a better driver than Chastain. I mean, I don't think there's much argument.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah, like, I mean, I don't think you could argue that Chastain is a better driver than Logano. But I mean, if Penske has some issues going on themselves, if the Fords are just going to come out like they did last week in Vegas, then yeah, obviously it's you fade everyone until they show it on track, kind of the way you started doing with JGR at the beginning of last year.
Mm-hmm. Any interest in Keselowski? 40 is the points bet, 33, 35.
No, I definitely think he's more of a placement or matchup driver. I don't think he's got a shot to win here.
I still think Suarez is interesting, especially if you can get it north of 30. I wouldn't touch the 25, but 35 is compelling. 33 is compelling. I'm okay with 30. That's kind of my cutoff.
Yeah, again, like I think we're getting into it, and we talked about this with Chris, and we talked about this during our season preview show. Like, we're definitely getting to a point now as the West Coast swing is ending. The cream is rising to the top here, and we are going to see the top of the odds board take home the majority of the wins this year. We will not see a whole bunch of 30, 40-1 winners like we did last year. So, I mean, it's going to be hard to pick off those big, huge, profitable victories.
Let's head over and talk some matchups. Before we dive in, I do have a few I want to throw out there. So I have Logano over Blaney. I have Harvick over Truex. I have Brad K over Ryan Preece, which was minus 114. And then I did Suarez over Bubba, which I think is actually, depending on where you look, I think the juice switched over to Bubba. So I bought it at minus 115. Brian has Briscoe over Blaney, which is wild.
No, Briscoe over Byron.
Oh, that makes way more sense. Truex over Blaney. But that's
just for the plus money value.
Yeah. And then Blaney over Logano at minus 110 and Almirola over Bubba at minus 105. So that's nice. Let's look at top Chevy. Kyle Larson minus 125 to be top Chevy. That's pretty wild. I feel like I'd rather just bet him to win the race because I think if he doesn't get top Chevy, it's because he had an engine issue and finished like 32nd.
Yeah, exactly. And I almost feel like that's a good spot where
I like Chastain at plus 550 and then
Chastain or even Byron at 3-1 there.
3-1.
I mean, his car is just as, I mean, it's not as good as Kyle Larson's, but there's definitely a world where they finish 3 and 4.
Yeah,
and
Suarez at 14 is interesting too. He could like top 4, top 5, and that could cash.
We'd need a wreck, honestly.
Chris Bell plus 260 to top Toyota. I don't hate that. Tyler Reddick at plus 450 to top Toyota. That's going on the card.
Yeah, honestly, I forgot to add that because I actually bet that earlier today.
Nice.
So.
Toyota, where's this is Caesars. Yeah, 450 is a nice number.
And of course, he'll probably get caught up in whatever shenanigans happen first, probably by Brad Keselowski. If we're being honest here.
Right, and Blaney's 170, Harvick's Logano at plus 310 to be top Ford is really nice too.
Yeah, that's a decent value.
I'm putting that on the card. Because it just like Logano is much closer to he's at least with Harvick and probably a better driver and probably closer to Blaney. Obviously they're teammates. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I don't really understand that number. I mean, especially he's starting, like, what is he starting, 14th or 15th?
Yeah.
It's not like he's starting 40th. Well, shit, we don't even have 40 cars anymore.
That makes no sense.
He's starting a lap down.
All right, where are head-to-heads? Are they upstairs?
So you got to go to schedule at the top.
Right.
There's a setup super weird.
So Byron versus Chastain. Chastain at plus 110 against Willie B, I think is interesting. Obviously, you're getting plus money. If Byron has a rough day, he has a rough day, and that's an easy cash. So
yeah,
don't hate that. Bell has more upside, but I think more downside than Harvick. Harvick would be like 7th, and then Bell could be like 1st or could be 31st. So
yeah, exactly. Harvick is the king of consistency.
Yeah.
He will finish between that like 4 and 10 range.
So in terms of matchups, I actually like this. I like Harvick on this matchup. But if you're looking to bet top 3s, top 5s, that kind of stuff, I might be a little more Chris Bell season. Logano favored accordingly. Austin, the Battle of the Austins is back on the card. That's interesting. Larson, you can get Blaney at plus 130. We were talking a little bit about this. Is kind of interesting, but I'd rather take. I think there's better ways to bet that, but I could be wrong. You could just fade Kyle Larson and hope for an engine issue, and then win.
I so want to bet that, but
do it, chicken.
Larson's car is ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, barring a crash, which I mean, obviously that could happen to anybody. I don't.
This is kind of interesting. Almirola minus 110 versus Bubba.
Yeah, and that's still playing into their histories. For work, I sent out a short about that. I think it's in 23 of the 25 short flat track races that Bubba Wallace has ran since his rookie year in 2018. Eric Almirola has finished ahead of him. That is not a coincidence. That is the difference in skill level on that particular track type, which is why I added that matchup early in the week. And you got Almirola at a better number at minus 105.
Yeah. I am adding Suarez over Brad K. I think Brad has looked good, obviously. Think he will be fine, but I'm getting plus 115 against Brad K. And I like Suarez a lot. I think they're very similar drivers in terms of upside and downside this week. And I think I think you're getting value there. So I jumped on that. Truex versus Hamlin plus 125 is also interesting. Obviously, Denny looked much better in qualifying, but I don't hate that.
That's actually a really good number.
Mm-hmm. Like that number seems far too aggressive, but maybe I'm guessing smarter people than me have jumped on that, and that's why it's priced the way it is. Let's find where the head-to-heads over here.
You know, I'm gonna add that.
Do it. I don't think Bet Rivers has any.
Was it 125?
Pardon me.
Kyle's yawning already. It's only 6:30 over here. I mean, maybe he was like me up watching Yale.
I've been up since 6:30. Doing grown-up shit. I do get my car smogged this morning.
Oh,
Run
that's always
errands.
lovely.
Stuff nobody cares about. So,
Well,
okay, Brian, should we review our card, give people a best bet, and get out of here?
yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So on my card, I like a lot of outrights potentially this week, but I am trying to keep myself in check. I have Chris Bell at 14-1. I have Daniel Suarez at 35-1. I have Kevin Harvick at 12, and I have William Byron at 10, just because I think it's a good number, and yeah, he performed really well in practice and qualifying, so should be in contention all day. I have Suarez over Brad K. I have Logano over Blaney. I have Harvick over Truex. I have Brad K over Ryan Preece. And I have Suarez over Bubba. I think you can get a better number on that if you want to ride the Suarez train with me all day. I have Harvick top 5 at plus 170. I have Harvick top 3 at plus 350. I expect Harvick to run near the front and have a really real shot to win the race, and I am gonna bet accordingly. I have Reddick as the top Toyota at plus 450 and Logano at the top Ford plus 310. I did bet William Byron to win the pole. Was not quite there enough at the end, but pretty happy with my card. I may dabble a little bit. Make sure you are following us on Twitter. If we add anything, we definitely will make sure to share that out. Brian, why don't you break down your card and give the people your best bet as we sit here today?
All right, so I'm going to ride with 4 outrights this week. Tyler Reddick, Kyle Larson, Martin Truex Jr., and Ryan Blaney. Blaney, the only one I added post-practice. Top 10s all bet prior to practice and qualifying, and one will be a post-qualifying edition as well, but I'm going with Brad Keselowski, top 10 at plus 340 I got earlier in the week at FanDuel. Eric Almirola at plus 430. You could still get him at 3-1. I think that's still decent value. And then Tyler Reddick at plus 135 over at Bet Rivers. That's one of my favorite bets of the week. Matchups, I had Chase Briscoe over Willie B, Martin Truex Jr. over Ryan Blaney, simply because it was plus money. Blaney over Logano because of my absolute distaste for the number 22. And then Almirola over Bubba Wallace we can give it as my pseudo best bet from earlier in the week. I feel really strong about that. And then today I added Tyler Reddick to be the top Toyota at plus 450 and Martin Truex Jr. over Denny Hamlin because it's plus 125. And for my best bet, I am going to go back to the board and add another Tyler Reddick top 10 that you can still get at even money. And I'm going to go full 5 units on this. I think this guy is primed to have the best race of his season and really put people on notice and make people recognize 2311 that they have finally arrived, and he gets a little bit closer to what Bubba Wallace has been doing this season.
Yeah, buddy, you are cooking with gas today. I love it. I'm expecting a nice day from Reddick. I think I got him on my betting card at plus 130 or something, but yeah, getting him at plus money is crazy. I'm all in on Daniel Suarez. I love him this week. I think he could have a really, really strong performance. And our friends over at Caesars have him at plus 150 to top 10. He's like between plus 140 and 150. I like him anywhere in that range.
Love it.
So I am in on that to top 10. Are you kidding me? I think he can win the race. So I think a top 10 feels pretty dang good. And like Brian said with 2311, I think Trackhouse reminds everyone of their upside. Daniel Suarez has been,
he's
in
been
terms
great.
of consistency, has been really, really good. I think he's top 10 in every race.
Yeah, he's one of only 2 drivers, him and Alex Bowman, to have top 10s in all 3 races.
And I don't expect that to change this week. So I'm putting 3 units on that. We'll see where we get to. As always, Brian and I will be back to recap all that was Phoenix, as well as get you set for the upcoming races. We will be probably in your feed Wednesday morning, so make sure you hit the subscribe button so you know when we post new content. If you enjoyed what we did, make sure you smash the thumbs up and let us know your favorite outright for the week. Good luck on DraftKings. Good luck at the betting board. And we'll talk to you next time.